Welcome to Someone's Gotta Drive. I want to put a warning out there that this podcast contains domestic violence, drug abuse, uh, parental drug abuse, childhood traumas. While this story can be validating to some, it can also be triggering at the same time. When I last spoke, we were talking about how I had left my ex-husband, how he started threatening me even more, and the last time he threatened me in email. When I got my apartment in New Jersey, my guy had asked me if he could stay with me. I had met his friends. I had met at least his mom and a sibling or two. And honestly, life was going pretty well. I would get the occasional phone call from my ex asking, what are we doing about the phone bill? What are we doing about the storage? Those type of conversations. And oftentimes, those conversations as well turned into, you bitch, how dare you? It's all because of you that this is happening. And he was right for the most part. I was the person who said we were done. But I thoroughly loved living in New Jersey. Every weekend, we would go do something. We would go hiking. We would go sightseeing. And I now had this new state that I got to explore. And when I had first come to New Jersey to work for that week, he had taken me out to dinner. He had taken me on a hike. He had taken me to these places. But one of the things that I grew utterly in awe of was that no matter where we were, we could see the New York City skyline. And I always found that so fascinating and just so beautiful. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the mountains and everything else too. I was also completely in awe with the fact that the mountains were an hour away. The beach was an hour away. The city was an hour away. So much better than living in Maryland, where everything seemed to be at least 3 hours away. One weekend we would go to the Palisades. Another weekend we would go to New York City. One weekend for my birthday, we went to Bushkill Falls and saw all these beautiful waterfalls that I didn't even know this place even existed. And as wonderful as life was, the reality was still this. I was broke. And I had a lot of things that needed to get paid for, like a lease that I had walked out on, a car payment that still needed to get paid. And sometimes buying groceries was a bit too far-fetched for me. For me, groceries were just bare essentials. Maybe some dinner, something for lunch, things like that. But snacks, I never really got snacks. Tissues, I just used toilet paper. I knew how to kind of make my dollars stretch and how to really be bare minimum. However, I was still smoking cigarettes and almost budgeting close to $100 a week to do that. My credit was shot. One of the first things my guy wanted to see was that credit report. He wanted to know what the number was. He wanted to know what we were looking like. If we were going to live together, that was the biggest conversation we needed to have was finances. One day he actually said, is the reason why you bag the groceries is so I'm standing by the credit card machine getting ready to pay? And part of me was like, well, yeah, kind of, because you keep adding to this grocery cart. And honestly, I don't think I can afford these groceries. And when I left Maryland, I was maybe 90 pounds soaking wet. I really was barely eating. I was lucky if I could afford one meal a day. And for those who know how eating disorders also work, that meant that my stomach was also very small and had shrunk. So where some people could survive or had to survive eating 3 meals a day, I sometimes could barely finish a dinner because honestly, my stomach wasn't big enough. Oftentimes, if we went out to dinner, I couldn't eat the whole thing. And I always felt really bad because here we were spending money on this nice dinner, but I can't eat it all. But my guy, he was pretty understanding. He was like, look, as long as you eat something, I'm not expecting the world from you, but I have to survive eating 3 meals a day and sometimes snacks. So whenever I eat, you eat. And even if that means you eat half a bagel or a few bites, it's something. When we got the apartment, I couldn't afford a refrigerator. I was honestly planning on going to some used appliance store, buying something cheap that's probably 100 or 150 bucks and calling it a day. I didn't have a couch. The couch I did have in Maryland, I had to leave it there because it was way too big and heavy to get it into our apartment. So there were some things that I was able to provide: a bed, dishes, pots, pans, things like that. But when it came to a dining room table or a refrigerator or a couch, I didn't have that. I had a TV, I had a TV stand, but some things I just wasn't able to bring with me, which I found very comical at that point because honestly, I went from having a 2-bedroom apartment with way too much stuff in it from 2 mothers dying to I don't have a couch to sit on because honestly, the one my mother left me, the one I was able to take from her house, was probably 600-700 pounds easily. There was no way I was getting that into my little apartment. On top of trying to learn how to eat like a normal person now, I also slept a lot. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. And I kind of had to be real and honest about it. For the past almost year, I may have lived off of 4 hours of sleep a day. And when I was exhausted and when I really needed the sleep, I was told I wasn't a good wife and that I needed to get my lazy ass up and to do something. So now I'm on my own and I don't really have to sleep only 4 hours a day. I can sleep as much as I really want. So honestly, I'm falling asleep usually between 9 and 10 o'clock, and I'm sleeping easily until 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And on weekends, sometimes I'm sleeping until 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And at a certain point, my guy looks at me and just goes, I'd like to kind of start the day. It's my day off. I don't want to sleep it away. I just want to enjoy it. But between healing from an eating disorder, going through all the trauma that I've gone through over the past few years, and honestly, the depression and anxiety that I was still feeling, I was healing. And I tried to explain that to him. And at first he understood. But after a while, he was like, "It is Saturday. It's 9 a.m. Get up." But in his defense, it was, "Get up. Let's go have fun. Let's eat some breakfast and let's go do something. Let's go hike a trail. Let's go to New York City. Let's go to a museum." And honestly, every Saturday it was like that, where we would go and do something fun and go hiking, go see some, Statue of Liberty or something. And then we would come home, we would relax and enjoy the rest of our day together and usually the rest of our weekend. And it was really nice actually, to the point where every time I posted something, people just kept asking me, "What, are you on this permanent vacation?" And I'd be like, "No, this is where I live." And it's really awesome. But one of the things that I will say is that he came from a very traditional kind of family. They very much believed and instilled, no living together until you're married, things like that. So the two of us living together within the first pretty much month of being together was kind of like, ugh. But at this point, I'm 28, 29 years old, and I'm going to be really super honest. I pay my own bills, and I've been on my own since I was pretty much 17, 18 years old. So at this point, no one's really going to tell me how to live my life. After being on bipolar medication, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety medication for quite a while, a few years prior, due to a mental breakdown that I had, I really was trying my best not to be taking any of these medications. I knew that I needed something for the anxiety for breakthrough. That I knew I needed. But I was really trying my best to stay off of the long-term medication. And the reason why was because honestly, I was drinking. And at one point, I was drinking so much, like every day, that my guy was even like, hey, do you really need to drink every day? Because, if you do, then that might be the sign of you having a problem or an addiction. And it was really nice and healthy for him to be able to tell me that. I wasn't angry at him, but it was nice to have someone on the outside looking in saying, that's the sign of an addiction. And I grew up with addiction. But what I saw as addiction wasn't daily use. It was the attitudes and the problems and the things that caused problems. It wasn't the everyday use. So if I could say, yeah, I can stop, that meant, okay, I don't really have a problem. And if I can live without it, then we're good. And to be honest with you, for most of my marriage prior to this, I didn't really drink, maybe occasionally. So for me, it was just one of those, I'm just trying to be me. I'm just trying to figure myself out. But if you're noticing that I'm drinking every day and you think it might be a problem, I will definitely listen. And the reason why is because no one ever listened to me. And I wanted to give him that satisfaction of, I want you to feel heard. And I would want someone to tell me, hey, you have a problem. Or it's looking like you have a problem. You might want to change this before it does become a problem. I remember what it was like being that child, looking at my mother and saying, I think you might have a problem. Do you think you could not drink every day? Do you think you could not do this or not do that? And I was always made out to feel like the bad guy. Like I was the bad person for even bringing this up. So when it was being brought up to me, I didn't want them feeling like they were the bad person or anything like that. I wanted them to feel heard, and I wanted them to know that I respect you, and if this is what you need or want, or you don't want to see me drinking every day, then I won't drink every day because that's what they need or want. After a while, everything really did seem great though. I wasn't really hearing from my ex that much. When I did, it was usually out of the blue, and it was enough to trigger me to have an anxiety attack, go curl in a corner in a ball and rock it away, things like that. But for the most part, I really didn't hear from him. Till one day, I didn't hear from him, but I heard from somebody else. And at first, I thought this was a scam. And this person reached out to me and said, hey, I know your ex-husband, and we've been seeing each other for a while, but I stopped seeing him. And I'm like, what do I care? Like, seriously, what do I care? And she's like, I'm a paralegal, and I think he was only seeing me because I'm a paralegal and I might be able to give him some advice or whatever. And he wants to try to get you for alimony. But this dude, he's freaking crazy, man. Like, I don't know even how to describe it, but he is insanely crazy. He's going to try to take you for everything you've got. And I have proof that he's been with me. So if he tries to get you for cheating on him, here's the proof that he's been with me during this time as well. In which she then sends me pictures of him in compromising situations as well. Pretty much revenge porn. And once again, I just felt like I wanted to hurl. I knew for a matter of a fact that it was over. Whenever I saw some sort of naked picture of him that he would either send me in, trying to be some sort of revenge type thing, or that one of his girls would try sending me, or like the ones that were in the conversations between him and some hooker on Craigslist. Every time I saw him naked in any way, shape, or form, I just wanted to hurl. I was so grossed out. And it felt bad because I'm like, I was supposed to be attracted to this. This was my husband. But instead, I was not attracted to this. I was just mortified and completely grossed out. I kept this information for my records, simply for my divorce. But I never reached out to the person, and I never replied to the person either. And honestly, this wasn't the first person to also reach out to me about this type of situation, trying to say that he's trying to get me for everything that I've got, on top of the fact that they would send me pictures of him as well. But of course, the one thing I was actually trying to keep from my guy's family was my ex-husband and my divorce. Like I had mentioned before, they weren't really too keen on, like living together before marriage. The last thing I really wanted them to know right now was anything about this marriage. I was so ashamed to be leaving. I was so ashamed to be getting a divorce. I was really ashamed, honestly, of my whole story. I had been so conditioned and so trained to be the bad person that because I didn't stick it through this marriage, that I was the bad person. Because I didn't want drugs in my life, I was the bad person. Everyone kept telling me I was the bad person, but everyone that was telling me this was the addict. Again, when my ex-husband was stealing my mother's pills, my ex was telling me it was my fault for giving him access to the safe. He wouldn't take the ownership of it was his fault for getting into the safe and stealing someone's pills. It was my fault for giving him access. And that's what the addicts in my life were doing. And, now I didn't have him in my life. And now I didn't have my mother in my life because, she had passed away. But that was still conditioned in me, that I was still the bad person because I walked away. Even though it was a dangerous situation, even though I've been threatened, even though I've had everything under the sun that you could possibly think of, at this point done to me in the matter of a year, I still felt like I was the bad guy. So I really didn't want my guy's family really knowing too terribly much about this situation yet. And part of it was, even though the two of us lived together, we had an understanding. If it didn't work out between the two of us, this apartment was mine. I could always stay here because he could always go home. But I didn't have a home to go to. I was on my own. Like I'd said in past stories, I could never go home to my dad because I was told, nope, you can't come home. No one was going to answer my call at 2 a.m. and come and save me. I had to always save myself. And at this point, my guy and I, we weren't even telling each other that we loved each other, even though I absolutely did. And I wanted to scream it from the rooftop. He wasn't saying it back to me at this point. So I really wanted to make sure that this was going to be a really stable relationship before I really aired all of my dirty laundry out there. One of the funny things about us living together early on as well was that I had been on my own since I was 17, 18 years old. So a lot of times I went to the grocery store and bought the ingredients and actually made meals. At least that's how I was also raised. And it was kind of the cheaper way of cooking. Instead of going to the frozen foods aisle and just grabbing some frozen dinner, usually those were lunches for me. For dinner, it was Whole Foods, things that I would cook up, season, things like that. So he knew from the get-go that I kind of knew how to cook. I might not have been the best cook, but I knew how to follow a recipe, that was for sure. And that Thanksgiving, I was supposed to be meeting his grandparents as well, but for some reason or another, his grandmother had actually broke her hip and was in the hospital. And that year, I asked if there was anything I could bring to Thanksgiving. And normally, Grandma brought the pecan pie. Pecan, however you want to say it, depends on what area you're from. And so I turned around and said, yeah, I'm sure I could figure one out. So I got a recipe. I made one. Let me tell you what, that was probably the best pie I've ever made. It might have actually been the first pie I've ever made. But let me tell you what, 12 years later, that is still a staple at every Thanksgiving. That year for Christmas, we actually spent that time not only together, but with his family. And for once, it was the first year that I didn't have my mom. It was the first year that I wasn't also super broke. I was able to put together a little bit of money and get my guy some Christmas gifts. We went out and got a real Christmas tree and decorated it. Normally, every year, I was the one decorating a fake Christmas tree that came from the Dollar General. And, I normally actually decorated the tree on my own. No one ever really helped me with it. And normally, every year, I was so broke that I didn't have the money to get Christmas gifts for anybody. And I always felt like such a klutz, I guess you could call it, because I didn't have the money. I just kind of felt like a loser every Christmas. This year, I didn't really feel like a loser. I didn't know what to get any of his family. So I was like, I know how to cook. And that year, I made fudge, cookies, and things like that and handed it out to all of his family members. And actually, I'll never forget being like, so, what are you getting your family for Christmas? And he was like, oh, well, the cookies that you're making, that's just going to be from the both of us. You pretty much took care of my Christmas shopping. And I was like, oh. It really was quite a lovely year that year. Even though I had missed my mom, it was the start of a new beginning. That year, after Christmas, we finally made a trip out to see my grandfather. One of the things about being married to my ex-husband was that, well, we didn't have the money to take vacations. We didn't have the money to go visit family far off. Unless someone was paying for us to come out to see them, we honestly didn't see most of our family at all, except for the ones that were local. But I really missed my grandfather, and I really missed my uncle. Remember, on my way up to New Jersey, my uncle was one of the people I called. My grandfather had suffered a massive heart attack and stroke years ago when my grandmother was still alive. And unfortunately, it really affected his speech. It was really hard to talk to my grandfather on the phone, and oftentimes we relied on my uncle to, relay messages to my grandfather and things like that. So that year, right after Christmas, it was one of those years where the Christmas holiday just so happened to kind of be on an extended weekend. We took the additional time off and used our vacation time at the fireworks company to go and see my grandfather and my uncle. And it was really nice. And my grandfather flat out told me right then and there, I really like this one. My uncle also, who of course loved to drink, was like, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go into town. We'll hit up a nice restaurant or bar. We'll get a hotel room in town for the night. And, that way we're drinking and not driving. We always tried to be responsible. And, that's how I grew up, partying, So I didn't think it was anything big or bad about it. We had dinner. We had drinks. My uncle got to meet my new guy. And he too, honestly, fell in love with him as well. It was really nice going into the next year and ending this year with one crappy ex-husband gone, a new guy in his place. Everyone really loved him. I was starting to look healthier. I mean, I might have been like 110 pounds at this point. I wasn't exactly the biggest or, really looking the healthiest, but everyone could see that I was really, really working on trying to get better. That New Year's, we then went up to see my guy's grandparents. And I was supposed to meet them for Thanksgiving, which I wasn't able to. And so this time, for the family tradition, I got to be included to go up north and go spend New Year's Eve with his grandparents. Everyone would try their best to get out of the New York City area, get up there, so that way, honestly, we weren't the ones in New York City wearing diapers and counting down the ball. We were out in the middle of nowhere, watching it on TV, having drinks, playing games, talking. It was a lovely time. I was still smoking cigarettes at the time, actually, and I remember his grandfather had caught me outside in like -3-degree weather smoking a cigarette, and he was like, oh, no, 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 no. Come inside. I'll find a place inside for you to smoke. And I remember being like, you really don't have to do that. But he was like, I remember what it was like being a smoker. I don't really want you standing out in the cold. Of course, they wanted to know who I was, what my story was, whole 9 yards. And I tried my best to be as honest as possible, but not give too many details. I never really referred to my ex-husband as my ex-husband, just my ex. And yeah, my mom did just die. So that part, there was no really sugarcoating that. But that night was the night that my guy told me that he loved me for the first time. And I don't know if he was just waiting for some approval from his grandparents or if he was just hoping to give it like some romantic feel. But I'll never forget that night. Sitting on the couch next to me, and he just looks at me and goes, I really love you. And in that moment, I was like, this is the way to start a new year. I had gone through so much that year. My mom died. I lost my dad, pretty much due to my own arguments with him, not due to death. I lost my ex-husband because I decided to leave him. And I really was hoping that all these decisions that I decided, the fights that I ended up having and starting and trying to finish, I was hoping that maybe it was all for the good. Maybe, I was just trying to stand up for myself when it came to my dad. I was just trying to stand up for myself and the life that I wanted when it came to my ex-husband. And honestly, I was trying to stand up to my own heart. Because at the end of the day, I knew that cheating on him wasn't exactly the best thing I've ever done in my life. That part I was kind of ashamed of. But I knew deep down in my heart, I couldn't live without this new guy. I knew that he was the one. And I knew I was stupid if I was going to let him go. So I was really hoping that all these decisions that I had made this year and all the things that I had been through that year, really was hoping it was going to amount to something. Because honestly, I'm completely on my own. It's just me and him against the world at this point.